Who's still eating scones or scones? Can you put them in a safe place? Because there's going to be, this is the dead zone usually after lunch or coffee. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. There is a purpose behind this. I live and work in the northeast, and sad to say, a few miles down the road from me is Sunderland. And you'll have heard of Nissan, the biggest car producer in Europe. And I've got friends who I play golf with who work there, and I'm intrigued at how they approach managing their systems in Nissan. So they start on a morning where the whole team, including the chief exec down to the floor sweeper, all meet, they're briefed about their targets, and they do a bit of Tai Chi. So it's this lean working principle. So I thought I would bring a bit of Tai Chi here this morning. It's light stuff. However, what I'd like to do is first to give a health warning. I haven't done a health risk assessment for this. But if you would all like to participate, I'd like you to follow my lead, if you would. And that means putting your cups in a safe place so you don't kick them over. And any buckets, we don't want anybody kicking buckets. And if you've got a weak disposition or a poor heart, then please stay seated. But one of the things that intrigues me is this notion of Tai Chi, this preparedness for work. And there's a preparedness for change. And I was intrigued by what they do in this factory, and it's common in the Far East, this type of approach. So I'm using the metaphor of trees. So I would like you all to stand up, if you don't mind. And you're now going to play the part, and this is about change. So we often are responsive to change and sometimes not proactive. So the first tree I'm putting up is a weeping willow. And now we're all going to be weeping willows. We're going to sway with the breeze. We're swaying with the breeze. Doesn't it feel good? And sometimes, see, you are alive. Tracy didn't kill you. But sometimes, you know, in organizations, we're buffeted by things that are out of our control. The wind. We get all these edicts and these mantras about change. And sometimes we're quite comfortable going with the flow. It's pleasant, it's easy. We can cope with that. We know where we are. We're in our comfort zone. Our skills and competence are fit for purpose. It's when we get pushed that sometimes we get uncomfortable. So the next tree is a poplar. Now this is really important because here we're stretching to the sky. Come on, stretch. This is where we want to set our goals and our targets. We're aspiring up here. We want to be doing something different. We don't know where up there is yet, but we like to get there. We want to make that journey. So the poplar tree is a one that gives us inspiration to reach. Happy with that? Yep. You look a good stand of poplars. The next one is the silver birch. And I like silver birches. I love the foliage and I love the bark. But I love the way a silver birch responds to the wind as well. It flutters with nervous anticipation. Do you feel like that now? You're thinking, who is this nutter? You have come to the wrong presentation. This is the arborealist group, isn't it? The tree surgeon. So that fluttering anticipation and excitement of a silver birch, eager to do so, but you know, sometimes don't know where to go. Sometimes we lack direction, but it still gives us that sense of excitement and anticipation. The next one, and I saw this outside in the park this morning when I drove in, is the copper birch. Beautiful and resplendent in its new livery. Change. When we get to the new, what will the new look like? Will it look bright and shiny? Will it be as we thought it would be? So here, we're all posturing. This is us. This is Eden Valley. We're the bee's knees. And Patricia said, you want to be the best. And why not? That's what you should be. That's what your goal should be, to be the best palliative care provider in this area, bar none. That's a great goal to set. And what would it look like? Lovely in its resplendent foliage. All your new services, your new hopes, your new aspirations. But we mustn't forget the sturdy oak. Now then, get yourself strong. Feel that your legs are planted. You're not moving with the wind here. You're solid. So the oak gives us that consistency, that certainty, that awareness that what's in our core, and we've heard from Patricia the values that you've so recently reviewed and addressed. They're the core of what you are. They're the core beliefs of who you are as an organisation. So we can strive for change, but we mustn't lose sight of the core. You can sit down now and eat your scones. I will come back to trees later. But of course, the added benefit of that, it's worked off some of the calories from the scones or scoons. Can you all understand my dialect? Because, you know, I like talk proper like I used to could when I was a children. But, so we have Tai Chi, and you've just had Geordie Day a tree. So, there are messages in this. It's not just a space filler, because I can take a glass eye to sleep. It's not a space filler. There is a message in here about how organisations can flex and move and respond with all those things that buffet them, all those things that challenge them, all those goals and aspirations that they may have as an organisation. Tracy gave us an excellent account of the challenges palliative care faces, and we know these are things that we have to address. But what I want to do is take you through change. So I'm going to put up here a crystal ball, and we talked about 10 years. What does 10 years look like? Where will we be in 10 years' time? Can we look in that crystal ball and see what Eden Valley might be in 10 years' time? Might it be the centre of excellence for palliative care, complex symptom treatment, management and end-of-life care, as well as a centre of research, academic study and practice development? They're great aspirations to have. They're great poplar tree targets. But I'm not a management theorist by any stretch of the imagination. But I like the words of Peter Drucker. And I'm sorry if the colour's bad at the back. But Peter Drucker is an Austrian-American management change theorist. And the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I love that. The future's in our gift. It's up to us to meld and mould what that future might look like. And I think the question then that emerges is, what future does palliative care, or do you want to build for palliative care in Eden Valley or Cumbria? What does that future look like? Does it look like the future which Tracy eloquently described, where we go out into the community? We look beyond the walls of the physical entity that's the hospice. And you might want to think about, well, what does that mean for your own oak trees? What oak trees do you want to plant? Because as they grow and mature and become sturdy, your organisation will bed into that change. So Peter Drucker, I quite like the theories he has behind how we manage organisations and manage change. But I was also inspired by this diagram. It's a very well-known one by Murray. It was published in the BMJ on palliative care trajectories. That gives us a clue to where we might think about how we redesign our services. So Murray described 3 trajectories. The cancer one, which we're familiar with, and as Tracy said earlier, the early hospice movement certainly was predominantly built around the notion of helping people with cancer. Cicely Saunders' own experience of caring for David. And we know that there was a typical cancer trajectory where a person would have a diagnosis that generally go along reasonably well and then fairly quickly deteriorate. That's changed. We're becoming much better at helping people survive longer with cancer than we ever were. So the point at which they drop off the cliff and die is changing, it's moving. So prognostication and identifying when the end of life stage comes with a cancer diagnosis is becoming very different. In life-limiting illness, long-term life-limiting illness, we see the pattern of someone with a chronic life-limiting condition where they're trucking along quite nicely. Some crisis occurs in their health and they relapse. And they recover, but not to what they were before. They never reach that same point. They truck along again and they relapse. And at some point along there, they may actually die. So their end of life could be here, here, or here. And again, it's that difficult prognostication. How do we tailor our services around that type of trajectory? And of course, we've got the challenging major health and social care issue of the day, which is frailty and dwindling. Progressive dwindling. I'll be like that in about half an hour. So how do we construct services around this type of challenging clinical situation with different trajectories? I've tried to map something onto this and hopefully it might help. So the first thing is that we have that early stage of diagnosis and illness where the person might initially be self-caring, supported by informal carers, self-help groups, and importantly, care in the community. That's where we can forge our links. But they may also need the help of the acute services, the diagnostic services, because they need to know what's going on. The big question is, how long have I got? 25 minutes. I saw this recently with my brother-in-law. He's 60, he's just been diagnosed with stage 3 esophageal cancer, and he is here. He's in this mix. And he's going to go on this curve. Unfortunately, they're not going to operate, so he's going to have palliation. So we construct our, and I think we have to use the services sometimes that are there, even if we might not feel they're quite right. It's what there is. The next step is where the person might need, again, the intervention of the acute services or respite care, and where that respite care takes place is quite an important point and has been a key point of discussion this morning. It doesn't have to take place in the hospice. It can take place out in the community. And also we should not forget the importance of rehabilitation. You know, we want to ensure that people live life and live a quality life. So we mustn't just accept that their illness is going to debilitate them to the point where their quality of their life is diminished. What we should be doing is trying to rehabilitate people to cope better with their illness and be independent and self-caring and living a quality of life for as long as they can. We get down here, we've got the challenge all of us are facing at the moment of CHC-funded care, the nursing home, daycare, a carer strategy. It was great to hear comments earlier on about the carer strategy, about and Tracy's point about carers often drop into the role informally without any skills, and it becomes burdensome before they know it. And they don't know how to turn a patient, they don't know how to bed bay the patient, you know, and they learn by trial and error and sometimes make mistakes along the way. And the burden on the carer resilience is challenged then. So carer support programs. We go, I'm boring you now, aren't I? I can see you. Out to lunch. At ASDA. But this is the other bit. This is the bit that's really the challenge for us, because we're talking about specialist palliative care inpatient units. They have a place. They will still have a place. And this is the bit that we need to share our expertise, our knowledge, our skill, our competence to increase the capacity to deliver specialist palliative care, not just in an inpatient unit, but within our partner organisations. So the great idea of preparing a bed in the trust or preparing a bed in a nursing home. Some nursing homes are palliative registered. So can we work with them and share with them? But we'll never get away from the fact that there are people who will die with complex needs and will have a complex death. Not everyone has a straightforward death. So we have to have still in the mix services that will support that clinical need. The challenge is, when does that end of life year start? When is that last year of life? The surprise question. Would you be surprised if Mrs. Miggins was dead in a year? No. So is Mrs. Miggins now in the last year of her life? Probably. It might be 12 months, it might be 14 months, it might be 10 months. But we know that Mrs. Miggins is going to die at some point along the way. So where do we get this side of the services right to support the client, the patient and their family at that point? And then in the mix, really important, is where does hospice at home figure in this? How does hospice at home bleed out of here and into these different areas so that we work seamlessly with a hospice at home service or hospice at home colleagues? That doesn't mean to say the hospice itself has to have a hospice at home service. We know there's a one in Cumbria, Wigton. Where are you? Fiona.
There's two in North Cumbria.
Two in North Cumbria, and I know Fiona. Where's Fiona? She's hiding at the back. Hello, Fiona. So where does this service fit in? Where does this change the model and change the service delivery? These are the things that we need to think about in terms of how do we redesign what we do? How do we design what we do to take it from, you know, its original inception after Cicely Saunders to where it needs to be now? So the next slide, and again this is a busy one, is this patient journey. So we can map a patient journey and we can loosely map services around that patient journey. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we can provide all of those services. It's the partnership working with the other providers that will help us deliver that. So, early days in their diagnosis and their illness, primary care at home, GP. So we need to work closely with GPs. We need to work closely with GPs because we need to know when that last year starts, when that surprise question is answered. They may have an acute relapse, they may go into hospital, they may come out, they may die, they may need more care at home, and so on towards inpatient unit care and complex symptom management and support. But at different points along the way, they might come back. You might have someone coming into daycare, and if you reconfigure your daycare services onto a living well model with a rehabilitative philosophy and approach underpinning it, then the idea is that the patient doesn't become dependent on your day service. So when I went to St Cuthbert's Hospice, we ran Monday to Thursday, 9 till 3. And it was like coming in here. The patients were arranged around the wall, drinking coffee and eating scones. And they'd been there for about 8 or 9 years. Well, there's a bit of an oxymoron there in life-limiting illness 9 years later. So I'm thinking, there's something not right here. We've lost the confidence to discharge patients from daycare. So we redesigned our daycare service to a living well centre using a rehabilitative approach. We had about a 54% occupancy when I went in and about 100 patients on the books. Many of them were there for, you know, since Pussy was a kitten. We had a pet, you know, that was the pet, the hospice pet. They knew it all. And I thought, this is not right. So I made a lot of enemies. The staff didn't like what I was proposing. The volunteers hated it even more. I still bear the scars. And so we dispensed with Monday to Thursday, 9 till 3. They come in, they got a 3-course meal at dinner time, and then they were plied with liquor in the afternoon. Gin, whiskey. I said, you can't do that. They can't go home half cut. What if they fall down and break their hip? So I stopped the drinks, saved £2,000. But we reconfigured and redesigned our service around a Living Well programme of 12 weeks. And that Living Well programme is based around a whole series of activities that we constructed and are nurse or healthcare or complementary therapist led, or Sharon, my former colleague over here, was our admiral nurse then, worked with us. And we reconfigured our services. We have a menu of around about 30 activities. So, and I'll show you some as we go on. I'll give you an example. So the patient comes in, they're assessed, they know they're coming in for a 12-week program, they have a key worker identified, a range of activities are prepared for them. So if someone's coming in with a neurological condition, it might be Parkinson's dance, Tai Chi, the trees are back again, cognitive work, creative writing, we do a dietetic assessment, you know, if we've got, so we do all of this. And they stay with us for 12 weeks. And no longer do they just come on a Monday, oh, you're a Monday. No, they might come 2 times this week, not next week, and 3 times the week after. The programme is built around them and built around what we can offer. The concept of being discharged was a real challenge. Oh, you can't discharge them. They've been here a long time. Yes, you can. And yes, you will. And so we discharge them from the program, but not the service. So if they go into that dip and they relapse, they can come back and be reassessed. But the philosophy behind the program, it's physio-led, OT. We had to reconstruct our workforce for this service. So recruited physio, OT, social work, more nurses, more healthcare. And I know Trish is sitting, where's the money coming from? We found it, and what a transformation. We had a 54% occupancy with about 100 patients. We now run at an 80% occupancy. We run Monday to Friday. We open on Saturday morning. We open on evenings. We have cake days. And we've got about 300 patients on the books. And the referrals are flooding in. So it can work. But you have to be clear about what your vision is. What do you want the service to look like? And what is it going to do? And it needs to do something differently. We can all go on doing the same things in the same way, or we can do different things but do them in the same way, or we do different things differently. And that's the challenge. Am I keeping you with me? Yeah. Right, waves. We've had trees, we've got waves. So, hello! So, when I did my first degree, I was introduced to this philosopher, American philosopher called Alvin Toffler, who wrote, in the early 80s, he wrote the book Future Shock. And it was a groundbreaking philosophical treatise about how society is changing. Trish mentioned rapid change. This guy coined many of the phrases behind it. And then he wrote another book called The Third Wave. And that was about the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and the technological revolution. About how each of those revolutions transformed society, but also sped up the rate of change. He talked about the roaring express train of change going downhill with no brakes. Pretty scary. And I thought, that's interesting for today. What does that tell us about the hospice movement? So the first wave in the hospice movement would be Cicely Saunders, the founder of the modern hospice movement, who gave us the model with St. Christopher's of a service that would provide care for patients with cancer to provide a dignified death. Remember, she said, how people die lives long in the memory. And for certainly the first 15 or 20 years of the contemporary hospice movement, we have predominantly cared for patients with a cancer diagnosis. Yeah, reasonable? Yeah. In the 90s, we changed. We went into the second wave. We began to see more people coming into hospice with other life-limiting conditions. Yeah, end-stage heart disease, end-stage respiratory failure. So we, in our day service, have a respiratory group and a heart group. We work in partnership with the Trust. We work with the Trust specialist, heart and respiratory nurses, clinical nurse specialists, and we deliver heart and respiratory services in the hospice in partnership with them. So, and it's physio-led with that team. So we now see in the hospice movement the second wave of helping those who need support at end of life with a diagnosis other than cancer access hospice care. And I think the latest figures for our area are around about 65% of our patients, or around about 60-65% are traditional cancer diagnoses, but now about 40% are other life-limiting illnesses. And what we've particularly focused on is the neurological conditions as well. So there was a dearth of access for patients with a neurological disease in Durham, and we've not only done that in our daycare services, but we've also done it in our inpatient unit. So things like a possum bed and stuff like that. The other thing we've done, we talked about comorbidity. I have to be careful here because I'm carrying a bit. But the person who has morbid obesity and with a comorbidity of a life-limiting illness or cancer, I reconfigured one of the rooms to a bariatric room. So we got a grant to buy a bariatric bed. We reinforced the hoist, bariatric slings, bariatric chair, bariatric wheelchair. So everything was done to help, because it was costing us £1,000 a week to hire a bariatric bed, and that was becoming more frequent. So we changed that. So it doubles up. It's really good, the bed. It's big, as you can imagine. But it doubles up. It means we can put couples together if they want to stay together. What a great thing that is. So if this was on, I go on handover every morning at 7:30 on the IPU, and we had a patient, they'd been married 4 months, been together for a long time, but 4 months, and they'd never consummated the marriage. So we gave them the privacy and the dignity of time alone in that room. It was out the way, and I'm not sure what happened, but they were able to spend time together in bed. I don't want to know. Not my business. But it's those things that we can do that make a difference, isn't it? So the third wave is the wave that we're confronting now. This dementia and frailty. I'm going to talk a bit more about dementia as I go on. So this is challenging. This is the bit where social and health and the palliative care sector face our biggest challenge. And the figures from Trish and Tracy earlier on about what those numbers look like are pretty scary. I was sitting musing when 65 was mentioned, because I'm 65 soon. Doesn't look good, looks bleak. So the question is, what's the fourth wave? What's the fourth wave of the hospice movement? That fourth wave is what we're talking about here today. How do we reconfigure what we do? How do we change what we do to be responsive? How do we get ethnic minority groups in, other people from another faith? How do we get prisoners into end-of-life care? We have a service level agreement with the Durham prisons where we will admit patients into the unit from the prison for end-of-life care. It works really well. We had 3 last year, very low key. The guards are in mufti. It's worse when they die though, because the police swoop in, because it's a death in custody. Everything's photographed. The names of all the staff are taken. The bodies whisked away. It was quite disconcerting when it first happened. But we're now reaching into the prison. So we've had the prison health staff come and work on the unit, and we've sent our nurse specialists into the prison. So we have to think, where are these other communities? Travellers. We have a big traveller community in Durham. We've got a number of big sites from the Showman's Guild. You know, you get people come from your Appleby Fair and places like that. So we have, one of our strategic goals this year is how do we touch base with those underrepresented communities? There's something about the ethics of access to hospice care. Who's the gatekeeper? Who decides who gets in and who doesn't? Is it your middle-class white Anglo-Saxon Christian predominantly? Because predominantly we're in middle-class Anglo-Saxon communities. But there are communities such as London, Birmingham, Leicester, who have much bigger ethnic and cultural and faith mixes. Are we fit and ready and fit for purpose to serve those communities? How am I doing for time, Trish? Because I'm conscious I'm conscious I'm gobbing on. Anyway, so we talk about the life cycle of hospice movement, but in its own way, an organisation has a life cycle, and this is something that I think is really important to bear in mind when we talk about where we might want to be. So the hospice movement, so Eden Valley's been up, what, 25 years? 30 years. So 30 years ago, a bunch of people got together, great idea, hospice for Eden Valley, for Cumbria, for Carlisle. Wow. Energy, drive, motivation, enthusiasm. They planted their oak trees, their acorns. Yeah. Often, our hospice started with daycare, and then we added on bereavement, and then we added on inpatient. Now we've added a lot more since, and I'll tell you as we go. So there's this growth, this enthusiasm, this commitment, this drive to improve and add services. But there gets a point where it becomes difficult to sustain, and that's even more challenging now given the economic climate we're in. That's sustainability. I said to Eamon before, when which hospice had £250,000 cut?
7.
Wow, you know, I mean, that's like a smack in the face, isn't it? £250,000 less. Cheers. What are we going to do now? We'll shut daycare. No. It has a cost. So, and then sometimes organisations move into decline, they become stagnant. Either through inertia, anxiety about change, fear of change, resistance to change, and they may then dissolve. Now, Tracy mentioned St Clair's and Jarrow. That really tragic what happened there. You know, that's just down the road from me. That was a wake-up call. That was a really, I worked with that hospice with Paul, fabulous setup. You know, everything that should be there was there, and for some reason this organisation declined. It's a wake-up call for us all. We need to regularly renew what we do. We can't just sit on our hands and think, oh, we're doing a good job. The patients tell us we're doing a good job. We get lovely letters and cards and commendations. You're caring, you're angels. Here's a box of chocolates, a bottle of wine. Get fat and merry. but in reality, that's almost a comfort blanket for us, isn't it? We can sit and, well, we're doing a good job, you know. 80% of the patients say we're great. What about the other 20? When my mother couldn't get in, I'll never forgive you. So we've got to renew, we've got to change, we've got to adapt, and we've got to grow in different ways. So I think organisational life trajectory is really important. And I think that's a salutary point in Eden Valley's history now, because you've got a new chief exec, you've got a progressive board who want to make these changes. That in itself is exciting. It's a challenge. So I think you're here. I think you're not there. I think you're back here, and you're looking at how you might grow and develop and progress. This slide might be out of sync because I nicked it off your web. Well, I didn't nick it off your web. I nicked the things off your website. But it might well be that you've changed those now. I picked these up as from your previous values tree. Do you remember your values tree? It wasn't an oak tree, it's been cut down. You've got new values. But people and families, local communities, staff and volunteers, and organisational effectiveness. And I've used the metaphor of ripples deliberately because they ripple into each other. They all are interconnected. We can't deliver and support care to people and families and local communities if we're not organisationally effective. We've got to run like a business. We might be a charity, we might have all that lovely ethos of care, support, comfort, compassion. We have to be businesslike. Those 8 shops are not just money pits. Those 8 shops are also your media presence in the community. They're your marketing presence in the community. They're the places where you can tell people about what Eden Valley does. And I think the same would be for the hospice at home services in Cumbria. But we've also got to be effective. And knowing that we're effective is sometimes a challenge. Because we think we're effective because we get all the nice soft fluffy stuff. But do we really know? Do we have an impact? How do we know we make a difference to someone's pain? How do we know we make a difference to someone's breathlessness? How do we measure that? So the soft fluffy bits, the nice cards and the chocolates, and that are great, but we need real hard measures. We need to be able to go to commissioners and to the NHS and say, this is what we do. This is the difference we make, and we can demonstrate that difference. So at Cuthbert's Hospice, we've got a project going at the moment called Impact Growth. We have had a data analyst working with us for 6 months. All of our System 1 records feed into one data repository. We've implemented a suite of palliative care outcome measures, and I can pick a patient or a year's worth of patients, and I can look at the difference we've made, for example, to the integrated palliative outcome score. So for pain, the rate is, the scoring scale is 4 to 0. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 4 is overwhelming distress, and 0 is at peace. We can actually measure that. We can now measure that for all of the key symptoms. We use phase of illness, Karnofsky score, Bartel index, and I use these. I run MDT every week. I chair MDT every week, and we review these on every patient at MDT. We know we can make a difference, and we can demonstrate it. And that's a great place to be, because when you go to your commissioners, and Tracy's absolutely right what she said before, the NHS needs to know what we do. It's great going to say, we get great feedback, but also, boom, we assisted 300 patients last year. We made a measurable difference, a 3-point difference to their perception and experience of pain or breathlessness, and we can show you that. It's a patient-rated measure. We can show you how we moved them through the phase of illness in their spell of care from unstable or deteriorating to stable or dying. And did they die in their preferred place of care? We've got this stuff there, we can do it. Now then, a bit more philosophy. So service transformation, it sounds great, doesn't it? It's easy to do. Well, it's not. It's hard. It's hard work. And it's almost like Sisyphus, who was the king of Ethra and later Corinth, who was banished to push boulders uphill for eternity. So Sisyphus, when he got the boulder to the top of the hill, it rolled down and he had to roll it back up again. And he was set in eternity in Greek mythology for that. I'm a learned gentleman, you know. But sometimes we're pushing boulders uphill in our organisation because there are people in the organisation who are pushing them back down. So the big changes we want to make can be sabotaged. I shoot saboteurs. Definitely. Go forth and roll your own boulder. So if we're going to be serious about change, and that sounds a platitude, but I really mean this. If as an organisation, your board, your senior management team, and down to the floor, ward to board to ward, if you're serious about change, you've all got to push the boulder together and get shot of this lot. But to be successful, you need the weight, and I'm talking about weight here, of your board and your executive management team. They've got to give the oomph and the impetus to this change. If they don't, you won't. And therefore, big boulders become big obstacles. So you need to avoid giving people Sisyphean tasks. I can't say that normally because my dentures fall out. Sisyphean tasks. In other words, tasks that are just too big. So if you want to make a service change, break it down into pebbles that you can pick up and carry and do. So you need a strategic direction, and I know the board and the exec team are renewing the strategy, as we've heard. You need these clear outcomes and milestones, and you need the tools to do the job. And the most important tool to do the job is the authority to do it. You have to have, so an exec team and a board have to invest in the person leading the project the authority to make that change and back them up. Even if they make a mistake, you can beat them up in the cupboard later. But they also need the human element. John mentioned that. The important part of the hospice movement is here. It's you that make the difference. It's you people that deliver high quality care, that are passionate about the hospice movement. But you've also got to have this behind you. So your board and your exec team have to invest in training to give you the skills and competence. It's no good to say, go and manage this project if you haven't managed projects before. It's tough. You know, oh, I'll go to Prince 2. Oh my God, I've lost the will to live. Prince 2. There was 3 weeks of my life I'll never get back. You need to provide the material and finance and the resources to get the job done. And you need resilience. You need staying power. We talk about carer resilience, we talk about community resilience, but we need team resilience. Teams tire, and they need out time. They need a break to recover. We need measures of success, and we need accountability and responsibility and the consequences of failure. Normally the consequences of failure is a pile of corpses out the back. No good, didn't do it. But no, there has to be some consequence. You know, if you really are going to make change happen, and you give people the authority to do it, then you've got to hold them to account as well. Especially if you're investing lots of money from your resources. So, Muhammad Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I thought, no, I didn't. Muhammad Ali, I love this quote, and I think it's really apt. It isn't the mountain ahead to climb that wears you out. It's the pebble in your shoe. Remove the pebbles. Yeah? They're the ones that stop you getting... So, you know, they're the things that stop you making progress. And they're the easiest ones to handle, the pebbles. They're much easier to lift than boulders. So, looking to change, picking up pebbles. Some of the things that could be done. Implement palliative care outcome measures. They're the standard currency now in the sector. How far is Eden Valley down that road? Is it integrated into your care system? Link practitioners. I know you've got link practitioners. They're your vehicles to share your expertise with other clinical networks. These are the people that can share your palliative care knowledge and expertise. Invest in them. I had a battle with our board. I said, if you want link practitioners, I need protected time for them. So for each of my link practitioners, and I costed it, they get 4 days a year for research, policy development, audit, teaching. But they've got clear outcomes and they have to give the evidence of achievement. Developing an acute, I developed an acute dependence tool at St Cuthbert's, and it's really coming into its own. So we were really challenged a few months ago, not by full beds, but the sheer acuity of the patients on the unit, the dependence of the patients on the unit. So we normally have 5 staff, 3 RNs and a healthcare in the morning and 2 and 2 in the afternoon. The acuity tool was showing me we needed 6.5 nurses. So I actually shut the unit to admissions, notified the CCG, notified the palliative care network, and nobody said anything because I could give them evidence of why that decision was made. It would have been unsafe to admit. It also tells you something about the skill mix you might need and the training you might need. So an acuity tool. Workforce modelling. What's your workforce for the future going to look like? I've changed our clinical workforce. I've appointed a nurse consultant 3 months ago. We've 4 of our senior staff nurses are now non-medical prescribers. The nurse consultant's a non-medical prescriber. Brought a pharmacist in. She's a non-medical prescriber. And our replacement admiral nurse, who took over from Sharon, is a non-medical prescriber. That's actually changing access to palliative care in our unit because we can admit outside of the medical hours of 9 to 5. I know it doesn't always go 9 to 5, you know, they're often there till 6, but it means we can do more than 1 admission in a day. Or we can admit over the weekend and they can be reviewed on a Monday. That's a big change. You need your medical team on board with that. We're fortunate we've got a new consultant, tremendous guy, and he's up for this. Addressing equity of access, this ethics of access to palliative care. I know we've got all of the data for our unit since it opened, since the IPU opened 12 years ago. We've got every single patient. 98% of them are white Anglo-Saxon Christian residents of Durham. Now, we don't have a big ethnic minority population in the northeast. It's about 3%, but it's growing. I can't remember the time I've been there. There's been a traveller in. We've managed to get prisoners in, or offenders. Be careful. So it's important not just to know who's coming in, but who doesn't get in, and that gives us the point as to where we can look to building new partnerships and arrangements to support other people. So, as I said, our strategy is to engage with those communities and populations who are disenfranchised from hospice care. Homeless. I've listened with real interest this morning about the children's unit. And the big thing, and again Tracy touched on this, is children are now living into adulthood with life-limiting illness where they never did before. We need a transition service. They're not, you know, they need something different from the traditional adult services. They need something different for the young adult, for the older adolescent or the, you know, the older teenager. So what might a transition service look like? Might that present an opportunity for respite care, for transitioning and introducing children or young adults into hospice care? So things to think about, acorns to plant. And new models of palliative care delivery. So as I said, you know, transforming our day services to a living well model, and bringing in neurological groups. So we didn't have a neurological patient. So the one thing I'm not going to get done, I retire in 8 weeks. The one thing I'm not going to get done, which I'm really passionate about and I would love to get done, in the Living Well Centre at St Cuthbert's, we've got this large room. It's actually a shower room, and it's never used. And every month we bring into the hospice from the college beauticians, hairdressers, to have a look good, feel good day for patients and their carers and staff. But one of the things that struck me is that there's a whole group of patients we just do not touch. These are the young survivors of chemotherapy, radiotherapy or radical surgery who are disfigured by their treatment. My goal was to transform this room into an aesthetic salon. To work in partnership with Trevor Solby's My New Hair, that's the charity that dresses wigs for those who have alopecia, to bring in aesthetic practitioners and to teach people how to cosmetically dress scars or radiotherapy burns or treat alopecia. I'm sad that I won't get that done, but I'm hoping I'm going to leave it in the hands of my successor. So there's lots you can do, you know, and that's another network, linking with the the oncologists and the plastic surgeons, different network. Right, we've had trees, we've had waves, we've had ripples, mountains. You've had a nice walk around the Down Valley on the weekend. Right, we talked about the poplar up here. So where is up here and what's the best route to get to it? It might not be the most direct route. You might want to take a staged approach where you can check and measure milestones, but you've got to be careful not to get caught in cul-de-sacs. Cul-de-sacs destroy projects. So there's a Hindu teaching. There are hundreds of paths up the mountain, all leading in the same direction. So it doesn't matter which path you take, the only one wasting time is the one running around the bottom of the mountain telling everyone the path is wrong. How many people have you got in your organisation? Yeah, you can't do that. Tried it, done it, didn't work. The naysayers and the doom mongers. Yes? Familiar with them? Believe that your message is stronger than theirs. Communicate your vision. Joe's better than war. And if it's war, sack them. No, I'm being flippant. Shoot them. It's a more permanent solution. But you get this, don't you? We've always done it that way. I've seen it all before. Never work. We've tried it and it didn't work then. Oh, it's the mantra of the comforted people. They don't want change. They're quite settled where they are. Change is challenging. You're pulled out of your comfort zone. Your skills, your competence, your knowledge might no longer fit the new world. Training, staff transformation, workforce transformation. So if you're going to put someone in the new world, watch it. Make sure they've got the skills and competence to do it. It's, you know, you don't absorb these from the walls. You have to invest in training. And then the most destructive element of any organisation, certainly when change is proposed, is the grapevine and Chinese whispers. Oh, they're going to sack 4 of you. They're redesigning this service, but they don't need these 4 RNs, mind. I don't know who it is. You'll get that. Vicious lies. You need to engage agents of change. And this is where your board to ward and ward to board are really important. This is about the authority bit. This is about delegating authority to people and supporting them, even if they might make a mistake. You can talk about the mistake later. I wouldn't shoot them. Employ shepherds to round up the flock and protect the sheep. Those are the people that are bought into what you want to do. Those other people say, oh, that's good, that. I really fancy that, and I think that'd be a real good change. Protect them from the naysayers and the doom mongers. Snipers, shoot the wolves, because the wolves circle the flock. It'll never work, you know. Tried it in 1979. Shoot the wolves and the saboteurs. Beware the 5th column, the quislings. They'll come and me, oh yes, it's going well. We're delighted with the progress we're making. Come out the room, they don't understand what's going on down there, tell them out. What are you prepared to concede? So importantly, if you want to make a change and you really are going to go for it, what's your red lines? Where are your red lines? Where's the bits that there's no negotiation? That's it, that's who it's going to be. Ship in or ship out. That's what you have to be clear about as well. We're nearly there, folks. So, cultural, organisational change and service improvement. Wow, what a gobful. Legacy issues, rituals and routines. How many nurses in the room? Do you remember when you were lashed because you didn't follow a model of nursing? You were ritualistic in your practice. Do you remember that? Rituals and routines. But more importantly, do organisations learn lessons? Do we remember what we've done in the past? Do we remember why things maybe didn't work, or why things did work, more importantly? So organisational memory and forgetting is significant, because sometimes if we lose key people, we lose this tacit knowledge. We lose this historical knowledge. So we've got to be careful to have an archive, a memory bank, and a register of what we've done as an organisation. And looking at ourselves, is what we do really working? Is there a better way? Is there a new way? Can we do things differently? And more often than not, there are ways of doing things differently. I'll give you an example. Talking about identifying partnership working and business opportunities. Durham County Council put out a tender 3 years ago for a children's bereavement service for those children bereaved as a consequence of a sudden or traumatic or suicide death. So road traffic accident, murder, drowning, sudden cardiac event, all those types of death. There's loads of evidence in the literature. There's a really good paper from the Scottish NHS about the impact on children of unresolved grief with childhood bereavement in these situations. They more often fail at school, have less well attendance, and more often end up in young offenders institutions. So as part of their wellness and wellbeing strategy, Durham County Council put this tender out. Now that's not something we would normally look at as a hospice. We'll care for children who are bereaved as a consequence of an anticipated death. I put a bid in, and it was for 50k. And we got a score from the bid of 92 out of 100, which I was really pleased about from all the other tenders. And we won it. And it's been renewed year on year without retender. So we're now into our 3rd year. So we now provide a children and young persons bereavement service. I wasn't copying, but we called it Jigsaw. The Jigsaw Project. And we provide, we employed a qualified children's counsellor from the money, trained and brought in volunteer qualified children's counsellors, and we deliver a children's qualified counselling service. But we've gone further than that. We attend TAF meetings, team around the family meetings. So if there's a safeguarding issue, so our staff attend those. We go into schools, we've trained teachers, we've developed a resource pack for teachers. We run Jigsaw days we've got one coming up. And the Children and Persons Counsellor came to me and said, can we do it outside? It's in June. I said, have you done a risk assessment? I was tongue-in-cheek, but she wants to do outside. Artwork, egg and spoon. I was worried a little bit about the 3-legged race. But there are other things we can do that don't intuitively seem that we should be doing, but in fact, it's not inconsistent with our visions or our values. Do we have the right tools and people for the job? Are we fit for purpose? Are our processes right? Training, workforce development, policies and procedures. Yep. And I love this quote. Whoopi Goldberg, Sister Act. Today is a new day. Do you remember that? When she was with the kids? Yeah, have a new day. I hope that at the end of today, when Trish picks the stuff up on there, she sees the themes I'd give her. Actually, these are potentially new days. Board to board, ward to board. The board and the senior management team cannot abrogate their responsibility for leading, directing and supporting change. If they're not bought in, why would you expect the troops to be? Risk management, rather than risk aversion, and a fair blame culture. People do make mistakes. It's how big they are. So, the look of fear. You want to do what? Never. And then resistance is futile. You're gonna do it. You will comply. It's my sense of humour. So, it's better to have willing passengers than conscripts. So that if you want the soldiers, need to be brought into the mission. They need to understand it, recognise it, value it and support it. That's far more likely to lead to successful change than merely a need it from the top. We're transforming day service in 2 weeks' time. This is what it will look like. It won't work. I'm nearly there. Blue sky thinking, we've all heard that one, haven't we? Blue sky thinking, goodness me. I wished I could think like a blue sky. Anyway, just thinking about Eden Valley and Cumbria, what things do you do really well? Just have a think about, you might want to put them up on the board there. What 3 things do you do really well that you think Eden Valley shines at? That's a model of excellence, a model of good practice. And there is good practice at Eden Valley. I know, I've been and met Trish's team. What 3 things would you like to do better or differently? What 3 things could improve what you do? What 3 things would you like to see developed if the opportunity presented itself? This is your opportunity to put up there some of the things that might direct the board to making some of the changes that you think will transform Eden Valley. And this is a one where there are no stupid suggestions. Often the golden nugget is the one that isn't put up there. I'm a bit timid about putting that up there. Put it up because it could be a gem. So, and then there's also something, if you think about lean working and stuff like that, have you heard of the 15-second, 30-minute rule? Right. How many of you at work, let's say you're walking to the canteen or you're walking past general office or past HR, and normally there's a bit of stuff to pick up and take to IPU or to the Jigsaw project. It would take you 15 seconds to pick it up, but it would save somebody 30 minutes work. Think about that. What little thing could you do that would make that difference? Just, oh, I could do that. And it would save somebody. You become more lean and more efficient. So, right. I've picked up this off your website. I tried to get the colours right, but they're not showing. But I love this. The next steps. You cannot discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose the sight of the shore. You have to put your toe in the water. You have to get your feet wet. You have to take a chance. And it might be one of the greatest things you do in terms of transforming your services. So striking out for the brave new world entails risk. And I looked at your emblem on your website, your monogram or diagram, IPU, daycare, outpatient care support, Jigsaw, core services, what next? And I had a bit play. Right. What projects do you want to plan for the future? You might want to strengthen clinical governance. You might want to strengthen clinical leadership so there's a strategy and ops link between clinical leadership and the floor. Your link practitioner roles, mentioned those already. Incident reporting and management, absolutely crucial to safe care as far as CQC is concerned. Acute independence. All of these will strengthen clinical governance and a fair blame culture. Now, I'm going to disclose something here. When I went into St Cuthbert's, the first year I went in, we'd had 38 falls. The next year, I got it down to 17. The next year, got it down to 11. Last year, we got it down to 7. However, last year was a bad year. Of those 7 avoidable falls, 5 resulted in a hip fracture. Well, I was wanting to hang from a tree. So each of those was a reportable incident, CQC notifiable, a STICE report, reporting to the North East Commissioners, reviewed against safeguarding. And I took the learning from that and I wrote a strategic review, a forensic review of why these falls happened. And I sent it to CQC, I sent it to safeguarding, and I sent it to STICE. Got fantastic feedback. So it's not just accepting them and saying, why did this happen? What were the fundamental flaws in our systems and process that allowed this to happen? So this year, I'm disclosing again, I've been there 4 years now, and this year we've had 4 minor controlled drug errors. Nothing that would cause harm, but something wasn't right. And I was intrigued why. So we did a root cause analysis on every one of them, and the fundamental thing was prescribing practice from the doctors, the design of the MAR chart, and one of the fundamental things when errors were occurring was the acuity on the ward. High acuity, less nursing time, bigger risk. So, you know, it's not just sitting and accepting it, it's actually owning up and saying, actually, things go wrong, but why? How can we improve that? Promoting Eden Valley to the wider community and palliative care sector. I developed a memorandum of cooperation with Northumbria University. Like Trish, I'm an academic by background. I worked there for 20 odd years. And we have had 2 research evaluations ready for publishing. Sharon knows one of our colleagues has a book coming out in the autumn on dementia care. I had a joint paper presented at the BMG Quality Conference in Singapore. We've done poster presentations, conference presentations. I was going to conferences and saying, and I was listening to people, and I said, well, we do that. We do that. I've done that, and I've done it for longer than that. And we weren't shouting about what we do. Promote who you are. You have excellence in your team and in your service. Sell it. And more importantly, and I really mean, sell it. Sell your expertise. So, I mentioned the Children and Young Person Service. We've been approached by the county to train the nurses involved in children's welfare in the basic principles of bereavement support. And they're paying us for it. 500 quid a day. Champion. Money in the bank. Think about where you might make not just your presence felt, but how you might generate income from it. Measuring effectiveness, the soft fluffy bits and the hard crunchy bits. I like crunchies, especially on a Friday. But that soft fluffy stuff, you can correlate it with the hard data. And together it's almost, it's absolutely affirming of what you do. You know, this is the stuff that the commissioners want to see. This is the impact report that we are doing with the palliative care measures. And then we've talked about transforming services and so on. So what did this mean for dementia services? I'm going to pick that out as an example. So in our day, so Sharon, if she doesn't mind me saying, was the first Admiral nurse appointed to a hospice in the UK. So she worked in Durham. She's now the consultant for the region. And we've now replaced Sharon with a really good successor. But we've really developed our dementia services. So in daycare, we have a dementia group, a dementia day. And some of the activities that we do are cognitive stimulation, sporting memories, fiddle boards. Have you seen fiddle boards? Like fidget gloves type thing. Dementia dance, reminiscence groups and visits. So they go to Beamish and places like that. All of the artwork in the hospice are scenes around Durham. And the photographs are scenes around Durham. And we have an advanced gardening group led by our OT. We've got a huge greenhouse. And this has been amazing. Guys who have been disengaged are now engaging. And it's incredible. And again, the same with Sport and Memories. We have Sport and Memories, which is another charity, come in and they'll talk about football and cricket and occasionally Sunderland. I avoid those days. And then the other thing we've done is before Sharon left, we developed the Namaste service. Namaste. So Namaste is an approach to finding the inner person. There were 2 services in St Christopher's in London and St Joseph's in Hackney, and we were the third to take out into the community a Namaste care service. And this is a touch technique and a reminiscence technique, and I've just secured, I put a bid in last year, got £113,000 from the big lottery to support increased hours for the project worker and a project lead, and the training money for Namaste volunteers. And this is a tale from last week. 6-foot-odd builder, retired, came and did the Namaste training and couldn't believe he could get away with actually massaging a man's hand. I would never have thought I would do that. I'm a big burly builder. Didn't do that. But he loves it. It's for him, it's like, it's been liberating, and he cannot talk enough about it. So these things are possible. How are we doing for time? Yeah, very quickly then. Nearly done. So, there's nought new under the sun. Ecclesiastes, the thing that have been, it is that which will be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. Then there's nothing new under the sun. Well, there isn't, but there's new ways of doing it. And that's all that says there. Do we do the same things in the same way? Do we do different things, or do we do different things differently? And coming to a close, keep calm and gemba kaizen. Gemba kaizen! This is the lean working from Japan. It's the plan, act, see, do. So get into your blood, into your DNA, that if you see something that needs doing, do it. Plan, act and do. And that includes the board and the senior management team, as well as people on the board. If you can make a difference, do it. And finally, we come back to trees. Back to trees. Remember the oak tree? If we don't nurture it, and it can't bend with the wind, it will fall. And we've had a very close shave in the northeast. Well, not a close shave. We've had a fallen tree, and that's sad. So we either change or we perish. Thank you.